bullet points, the summary of the thing, the things in the vision document, the sectors, which Jorges has beautifully, his team has done. I think this is a very good representation of it. But what I'll do is the background, why do it? Because that you won't read. So I'll go through a little bit and also go through why. What is the situation otherwise? So the idea was that a place so distinct and so secluded and so different like Ladakh should choose a future of their own making, and there are various things like Ladakh is the best model of hill area development. Now, hill areas are a minority generally in India. In a huge tropical nation that has like 1/5 of the world's population, the hill area people become not just a linguistic and ethnic minority, but they become a technological, climatic minority also. So developing hills should be seen differently, and Ladakhis should not just transplant policies that work or don't even work in Delhi to 11,000 feet and then regret and complain. We have to choose our own path and make that map. That was the idea. So Ladakh becomes a model. Always we would say that a vision should be a little beyond achievable. So it looks like a dream in many ways, which is what they should be. So you stretch yourself to achieve those. It should not be like a action plan. It should be beyond. So, and it should have economic self-reliance. Ladakh has become very, very dependent, totally dependent. You can see it. An indicator of this would be if you stand on the highway coming from Srinagar or Manali, you will see all hundreds of trucks passing by, all fully loaded, having a hard time climbing the mountains, and then you just look at the trucks going back, they'll be zooming empty. So that sort of shows how dependent we have become. We have nothing to give, we only take. And we have nothing not only to give others but for our own use also. So that was one of our big concerns, that Ladakh is becoming more and more dependent. We may see it as glittery progress, but the roots are eroding. There's nothing that really anchors you in terra firma. So employment, which is a big issue, full employment it says, which is, again, I would like to give the background to these, otherwise these are words, but they'll stay on this wall. But unemployment had become, or is still very much, a huge problem. But it is not really unemployment, it is ill-employment or misemployment. There are roughly 10,000 Ladakhi youth who perhaps would raise their hands for being unemployed. On the other hand, there are perhaps more than 10,000 people who come from all over India and neighboring countries to work in Ladakh. For what? Employment. So how is it that 15,000 come for employment and 10,000 register for unemployment? That's the scenario we are facing in Ladakh. So employment or suitable employment. Similarly, quality of life, equity, social justice, peace and freedom. These are some values guiding a model of respect for universal human values. I did not comment on these. These are just ideals and values that we cherished for a future Ladakh. Okay, now in these things, then land-based economy. Now Ladakh has always been, for millennia, since people existed or have come, has been land-based, whether animals or later agriculture. It has sustained so many centuries based on farming and animal husbandry, carving out farms out of like rocks, really, growing on sand, on rocks. It's a marvel, it's a miracle, and we should not lose sight of that and strengthen that, because self-reliance in a place like Ladakh cannot be thought of without thinking of land-based economy also. So self-reliant community as before. So we maintain our self-esteem and self-reliance, self-dependence. Yeah, blend of traditional practices, definitely we have a lot, but modern is affecting only some parts and not the crucial parts. For example, I feel very shocked and surprised when I see, so many things have changed in Leh, in the way we transport ourselves, in the way we live in our houses. But if you look at Ladakhi farming, in many ways it is as in 17th century. Or if we have changed, then we have blindly changed for something that is not suitable for our circumstances. So how to bring suitable technologies that can keep our self-reliance while at the same time respecting the traditional practices. So from yaks and zos to tractors would be a too drastic jump, one that sustains our farm with nutrient cycling and so on, and the other that drains the farm and pollutes the environment and so on. So how to balance that? Scientific technology with respect for conservation of environment. Of course, that's one of the challenges in Ladakh. How to, without destroying the environment or our own standing, make progress. Rural infrastructure, making village happy place to live. Yes, that's one thing that has had the hardest hitting times. Most of the infrastructure, modern facilities have come in the city. There's hardly anything that has changed for village people, and that has led to urban migration. So in the last 50 years or so, Leh has grown many folds. From a village-like valley, it has grown big. Ladakhi people have not migrated to other big cities, but that goes to their credit. They have, whether they go for studies or whatever, they come back. There's very little migration to Delhi or Kashmir or any other places. But within Ladakh, there is heavy, explosive migration. So villages are emptying, whereas Leh is suffocating. That's the scenario I think you should also have in mind when we talk of that. So it is a happy place to live, check urban migration, provide all basic facilities while preserving traditional values. So that was the vision, but how much action and implementation we can discuss later. Water resources, of course, in the past, Ladakh is a desert in the sky. So you can imagine how much harder it is to deal with a desert and deal with a cold desert. So water has always been the deciding factor whether you see a village or a total desert in Ladakh, it's water. You have water, there can be greenery, there can be people. You don't have water, a good village becomes a desert. And that is also happening. Now with climate change and so on, even more so. Already we hear of what we could call climate refugees, entire villages leaving, abandoning to another place because there is not enough water. And it's not just that, but if you visit Ladakh, you will see every village has a huge desert below it. So that also speaks of the shortage of water, because of which the desert part remains desert. And whatever was possible with the given water in the stream was greened by the people who settled. Also to just share with visitors that there is very little that Indus River does in Ladakh. Although you associate Indus to Ladakh, there's hardly 2 or 3 villages that really benefit from Indus. It's all the tributary streams of Indus on which all the villages are. So if it is Indus like this, you have parallel streams in every valley, and that's where the villages are, all parallelly, with streams going into the Indus. So managing water is a big challenge, always has been in this mountain desert, even more so now with the fast melting glaciers, untimely rains and droughts, and sudden melting like we saw in the last 2 weeks. So that will be our big issue. From drinking to farming, that is, water anywhere is the lifeline, but in a desert you can imagine. So how we manage our water will decide how Ladakh lives or not. So in water resources, because there was such shortage of water, Ladakhi people were very innovative to distribute that little water in ingenious ways. But now that lots of new things are coming to Ladakh and children are only in the classroom studying what is in the books, hearing whatever the teacher says, they often are not raised to respect these frugal, innovative ways of water distribution. So there is sort of a disconnect from what the generations have learned about water management, and then suddenly they become illiterate, uneducated people, and you are sent in school. So there is a very important task to how to adapt education so that it doesn't just talk about some problems in Delhi, Mumbai, or New York, and doesn't speak about what Ladakh has developed over the centuries and what was otherwise passed by the parents to their children. Now that's not happening. Now the parents are relegated as illiterate, uneducated people. So it's not just water, it's how we treat and deal with water that can also make a lot of difference. So health, holistic health scenario including physical, mental, social, ecological well-being. So yeah, there's nothing special I will say, but generally that Ladakhi people led a very healthy life in the past because they were all farmers. Every Ladakhi, whatever high office they may take in the bureaucracy, would go back in the evening to work on the farm. That was the beauty of Ladakh. You have commissioners, you have whatever, in the evening they are also farmers. That was a beauty. But now that's not less and less true. You have people who have migrated, who stay, who have no gardens, no farms, nothing, who are like any urban people and who are becoming a big reason for worry because all kinds of diseases are afflicting Ladakhi people now. These urban lifestyle diseases, from high rates of cancer, especially stomach, to the lifestyle related ones, diabetes and all such things are coming. The answer perhaps is not in setting up more hospitals and bringing more doctors and medicines, but perhaps revisit to the lifestyles that we are, being pushed into or choosing. So holistically it has to be looked at why and how to solve, not just oncologists and specialists we get from Delhi, and we beg for very highly skilled specialists from Delhi and Mumbai, which is very good, but that's a very short term thing. We keep hearing of specialists coming to Ladakh. That's a charity, which is okay, but how to make that lifestyle revisit, and so that we don't have such needs as we hear. Education, building human resource in every child through harmonious use of natural resources and guided by cultural resources. Now in Ladakh, education came suddenly in a big way in the 60s. There were hardly 5 or 10 schools before 1960s, and in 60s when the roads opened, suddenly the 10 schools became 200. And with such vital thing as education, where every citizen spends 10 to 20 years of their precious human lives, not much was, attention was paid. So whatever you get in Kashmir or Delhi was transplanted here. Teachers from Kashmir or Jammu were transplanted here, and they were supposed to prepare our future citizens to live in Ladakh. How could you have that? In fact, that was not even thought of. It was seen as a system you put your child through so that they get a government job. We forgot that this 20 years that every person gives before they start life could be an asset to prepare them to face life in a place like Ladakh. But instead, they got disconnected. Whatever education was happening at home, by the village, by the parents, the whole village would get together, not in a building called school, but educating in life through being there to prepare every young person to lead life in a place like Ladakh. So those schools, conceptual schools, were all closed, and they were put in these concrete boxes with a teacher with a big stick, making them, disciplined and civilized. So we have to revisit that. How can education, the 20 years or so that every young person gives at the very beginning of life, is used to prepare them for Ladakh, using our cultural resources and not just textbooks and teachers from places that do not understand Ladakh. And same with the natural resources. How we can use, preparing them to make good use, sustainable use of our own natural resources so that we can be self-reliant rather than depend on truckloads of, convoys bringing things for us. Social and cultural values. A society firmly upholding its core social and cultural values while pursuing goals of economic self-reliance, preserving of cultural heritage, monuments, arts and crafts. So one of the things that we have met with is, as roads opened and the world came here, especially the governmental agencies that were to develop us and civilize us, we lost sight of our own standing. We lost sight of the values that guided a place like Ladakh. So with abundance of resources, spend here, spend there, all kinds of corruption of different levels, from financial to thoughts and values have crept in. So how can we hold these values that have guided Ladakh over the centuries for living and surviving and later thriving and flourishing in a place like this? These social and cultural values should not be abandoned for whatever quick remedies and doses of development we get from outside. Modern development, power, electricity, energy are the fuel behind. In that, despite being in the mountains with such hydro resources, Ladakh has been a power deficit region where people have hardly had 2 or 3 hours of lighting in the evenings, that too in the city till recently. Villages would still go on these lamps of 18th century. So how can we optimally utilize the hydro resources, the solar resources that a place like Ladakh has, and not only sustain ourselves, but can be a surplus and can actually export? We may not be able to export much other things, but energy could be one of those things that we can export to the rest of the country, because being in the mountains where rivers flow, you have all kinds of possibilities. And little better than other places, Ladakh has less risks of submersion and other issues, because we are in a desert, to exploit or utilize the hydro resources. Similarly, what has changed, if I may also comment on, is that now Ladakh is being seen as a source of energy for the whole nation. I don't know why, not so much in hydro, but in solar. So there are plans afoot to have as big as 20 gigawatts of solar power. Yeah. There are, unless done well, they could also damage a lot, but we have to think. On one hand, it's great that big chunk of nation's energy comes from the sun, and Ladakh can contribute to that. But at the same time, Ladakh should not be, adversely affected. So 20 gigawatts is like unimaginably big. It's like 5 or 6 nuclear power plants of you cannot imagine. We have not seen anything close to that. Our biggest hydro station is 45 megawatt, and it takes 20 of these to make 1 gigawatt. so Ladakhis have not seen any of this scale. So these are some changes that have come since. But Ladakhis have to be in control of whether they want it and how they want it, where they want it, even if we don't mind sharing resources like the sun with the nation. We should give also, but in a way that we are in charge. So making Ladakh an energy surplus region was the idea behind the vision. Energy surplus region, providing reliable, affordable, quality power to its people, tapping renewable energy resources. So it is poised to go well beyond what was envisioned. But of course, we should not lose it out of control. Tourism is, yes, after 74, it has grown and grown. When this vision was being written, the highest numbers were around 18,000, 20,000. Since then, it has gone to 180,000 to 200,000, tenfold increase, explosion almost, but very little preparation for a tenfold increase. Therefore, it's very haphazard, free for all, in a fragile place like this can spell disaster. But if well managed, well distributed equitably, it can also spell a blessing to bring intercultural exchanges and exposure, economic resources right in your village. Tourism, if well managed, can be an antidote to many of these issues. Urban migration. Why do they come to Leh? Because they seek opportunities. If the opportunities go to the village, then they'll be so happily spending life in the village, farming. If they have a homestay, your market is coming to your village. You grow some vegetables, they eat. So you sell your products right there. In the winter, you're idle. You make little handicraft products. In the summer, visitors take them. You don't have to go look for markets. It's the ideal situation, perhaps, if managed well. But unfortunately, the way it's been managed is that Leh has become beyond, tolerable. It has become a slum where you have now traffic jams, and therefore all the smoke and pollution of air. Water is untouchable, not to speak of undrinkable. 30 years ago, we used to drink from all the streams that you will see in Leh. So it's just free for all. And the model of developing tourism is like, you have Pangong Lake, good for the Changtang Pass, you would think, where it is. But no, the model is that you take a diesel car spewing smoke all the way, 1 kilogram of CO2 per 4 kilometers. Every 4 kilometers you're dropping bombs. You get to Pangong, and the model is that you come back to the hotel in Leh. 9 hours of car. Think of the poor tourists also. They should liberate themselves from this torture. Rather than developing beautiful, nice, homestays and cultural exchange opportunities in that region, even if we were to promote, it's a model that Leh has all these facilities. Rich people in Leh control it. They send them there, they bring it back by evening. Changtang Pass get what? The garbage and all the diesel fumes. And the lake is committing a suicide. Yeah? So it's a flash that will be gone. 4 din ki chandni, fir andheri raat. That's the model we are following. So it's very, very sad. So scaling up tourism without endangering Ladakh's fragile ecosystem and cultural ethos. That part we forget. Scaling up we have done. The rest of the vision. so we can say, yes, we have gone by the vision and made it 10 times. But then how? Don't ask. So we have to revisit these things. Nubra opened around this time or after this. But people knew for 3 years Nubra is going to open for tourism. I saw no planning, no discussion about how to manage, what is the capacity of Diskit, Hundar, and how well to manage. Just explodes, opens, and finds its own course, bad, good, whatever. So that's not like having a vision. Urban infrastructure. So urban, when you talk of Leh, to provide Leh town and block headquarters with modern civic amenities while addressing their environmental and ecological concerns. Too much urban infrastructure has been dumped in these urban or block level urban centers. But yeah, without the rest of the things like addressing environmental concerns and so on. So we are committing in a way a suicide by excess in the urban centers and deprivation of the rural. So it's killing the villages, killing the city. That needs to be revisited in this context. Industries put Ladakh on the industrial map of the nation by tapping its local resources, including arts, crafts, and promoting entrepreneurship while adhering to the principles of eco-friendliness and social equity. Yes, but industry doesn't need to always mean, a factory with smoke belching. An industry can be based in every home. We have such long winters with people not knowing what to do with themselves. Every home can produce handicrafts, traditions that we have inherited from our forefathers. Good to sell them to tourists when it is peace times. If it is a wartime or some geopolitical calamity, you can use them. So industry can be decentralized in every cottage, every home. So that kind of industry that doesn't hurt others, but at the same time makes use of our human resource when it is available. Perfect for Ladakh when half the year you have to be indoors. You can have industries of this kind and be on the map of the nation. IT. Enable Ladakh to use information technology in key sectors for employment generation, economic growth, planning, connectivity, and entrepreneurship. IT was two ways. IT, yes, to use IT for all these things, but IT was another sector when we were discussing this. That is Ladakh suitable. For Ladakh, industry or IT particularly, you need industries that are low in weight and volume, high in value. That's what we were looking for in industries. Say Pashmina, very good for Ladakh. Just a handbag can be hundreds of thousands of rupees, so you can sell it anywhere without overcoming all the landlocked situation you have. It doesn't matter. So herbal products, handicrafts that are high value and low mass weight volume would be good. And IT is a similar thing. Ladakh can very well become a IT hub with so many young people going through education. And winters doesn't matter. Winters are very IT friendly. I mean, I wouldn't like to be in a building in Bangalore. I would like to go out and enjoy outdoors. But you have to be in a building and do your programming. If that's the case, why not in a cold place like Changtang? You make a solar heated, perfect temperature inside and you could do. It doesn't involve trucks through precarious highways. It doesn't involve aircraft. It's all digits flying this way and that way. So if Ladakh was to choose, this would be one. And why not? Whatever has said that Ladakhis wouldn't go digital. So, yeah. Yeah, very strangely, the very road that blocks our trucks is also blocking our digits these days, this week.
Oh, I know.
Almost disproving me. BSNL is working hard to disprove me. They're saying internet is not working for 1 week because Zojila is blocked. Well, for trucks I thought it's blocked and it's reasonable, but even for zeros and ones, Zojila is blocked. So zeros and ones can't fly. If Bangalore is so well connected and still goes for digital, well, Ladakh should all the more. We have that as the only option and not the others. Actually, it should be here more than in any other place. They can have other options. Planning and governance. Enable existing planning process to match spirit of Panchayati Raj through promoting micro-level planning and strengthening democratic governance at village and block levels. I have problems with this. Ladakh has had its, Panchayati Raj is a beautiful concept where villages are given their own freedom to make their own plans and carve their own programs for development. It's sort of a concept of making village republics to start from the grassroots and then the Indian Republic. But in applying that concept to Ladakh, I want to give my background to this. Panchayati Raj has come to Ladakh, but in a very, very sad way, which is so sad, because it has sort of killed a very ancient traditional system we have had. So Ladakh already had gobas and members of villages, something like Panchayat, and now with suddenly Panchayat Raj coming and not adapting to local realities, you get two incompatible somewhat, overlapping each other, clashing with each other. So I see many villages, this is what I used to predict, and now I see gobas and sarpanches at loggerheads clashing, whose power it is and there was a panchayat, suddenly something else was imposed, and that new one has all the authority of the government. The ancient one, which is embedded in our heads and hearts, and we cannot take it out of our system, suddenly is powerless. The one that functions has no power, the one that has power does not function because it's so new. So gobas still decide things without having almost any authority. Panchayats don't have that rootedness into the villages. Ideally, we should revisit that also. Why shouldn't panchayat system merge into the goba system, thereby strengthening the goba system instead of putting two parallel things clashing, and whatever little progress was possible, now the energy dissipates in these clashes. So that's a sad system. Otherwise, yeah, panchayats are great, but we had something that was like that already. So why shouldn't the new thing adapt? So you should revisit that in that light also. But other than that, micro level planning and strengthening these democratic principles should happen in all villages. So fine, goba system may be a little less democratic. So make it more democratic. Why throw the baby with the wash? Here I would like to say, enable existing planning process to match spirit of panchayat. I would rather say enable panchayats to match the existing system. So if we adapt to all new things that come to Ladakh, we'll be jokers and cartoons even more than we are. We have become. So let the new things adapt to what is existing and let something better come out, is what I would wish. Well, sorry about this lengthy introduction, but I thought understanding the environment, the ecosystem around it is as important as just the lines or paragraphs or pages in that document, and this way you would be able to give more thought together with the Ladakhi people and expertise from places to revisit and recommend something that the authorities can take forward. Thank you. This is just a summary and